Hello and welcome to Media MD, the podcast where each fortnight we prescribe each other a piece of media that we have somehow missed. I'm Reuben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And when I said that each fortnight we prescribe each other a piece of media that we have somehow missed, that's not what we're doing today. we're in between weeks, which maybe it's time we updated that intro spiel to include the fact that we do episodes in between our fortnightly episodes, Elliot. But look, I don't know how to edit audio, so we're just going to have to roll with it. So this week, instead of talking about John Wick, which we're in the middle of watching, I'm in the middle of checking out your recommendation to me, which we'll talk about again next week.
Yeah.
We thought we would take a look at another piece of off-week content. This time we're revisiting a series that you may also enjoy if you enjoyed some of our other stuff. Nothing really in particular. It's just a series that we both, I think it's fair to say, is quite dear to both of our hearts.
If you enjoy good TV.
Yeah, if you enjoy good TV and you enjoy giving something a good shot and letting it get better for a few episodes. Because in case you couldn't read the episode description, the episode title, what we are talking about today is a TV show called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah. Elliot, do you want to give us it seems so weird to say a plot summary, but a description of what the plot starts out being, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I guess like the first thing I always sort of want to point out when sort of talking about this is, since it's part of the whole Marvel cinematic universe, I think most people sort of assume it's going to be a sort of superhero type show, especially because, you know, there's so many of those, especially if you see any of those DC ones on CW. But
yeah.
S.H.I.E.L.D., to me, I feel like it's more like a sort of spy show. Like, it reminds me more of the old show Alias and stuff like that. Like, it feels more like a spy movie or TV show than having anything to do with superheroes
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, so, and I mean, basically, it's if you've seen any of the Marvel movies, S.H.I.E.L.D. is this organization that's basically like the CIA, but for dealing with superhero stuff. Yeah,
and like mysterious otherworldly artifacts and all that junk that S.H.I.E.L.D. is the CIA that operates on the things that aren't in our world.
Yeah, and so especially at the start, the series sort of goes week by week, where they, you know, sort of following that sort of monster of the week type format where there's some weird object or weird something or other, and
something's come down from space and the team have to investigate it, or someone's started missing hands or growing extra hands, or... Yeah,
and I mean, this is probably a stupid part to start describing, even though it's first, because this is the part that's sort of universally hated. It's generally regarded that the most of the first season of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not very good, and it really sort of picks up right at the end of season 1. And that's where things get a lot less monster of the weeky, and it becomes a much more serialized show. And yeah.
Yeah, I want to touch on this. I think so. The turning point is season 1, episode 17, right? Which is an episode called Turn, Turn, Turn. But before we get to talking about the whole kind of twist and how that plays into the show, I think it's important to point out that it starts out weak. The show starts out weak, but it doesn't start out unenjoyable, at least not to me. It didn't. The Monster of the Week format, I think the biggest problem with it to me is that it's a format that doesn't last. It's a format that can't really last without getting quite repetitive. And so, sure, the show starts on a low point. And in fact, the worst rated episodes of the show are the first season. The worst overall rated episode of the show is number 2, just because it wasn't the pilot, it was just the next episode, and it's, you know, not great. But it's not terrible, I don't think. I think the show just kind of suffers from its format at the start.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I didn't find the Monster of the Week format itself to be crap. And I mean, you know, I've watched almost 11 seasons of X-Files, 13 of Supernatural and stuff, so I clearly don't have a problem with that format. I think...
Wait, you're still watching Supernatural? Man, that's some dedication.
I really hate myself. I think the issue with most of season 1 of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that the characters are really flat and very tropey. And that what really happened when they ditched the Monster of the Week format is they actually started to work on the characters, and that's just what made the show way more interesting.
Well, looking back, I mean, I haven't rewatched the first season in a long time, but looking back at the kind of trends of the ratings of the episodes and looking back and trying to remember my feelings on the episodes as they were coming out, I think the show started out weak, but it was always going up. It was always getting better and better in quality. And then there was a jump at episode 17, which we'll talk about shortly, but it was improving. It wasn't like staying stagnant and then jumped up in quality.
And I think that's because despite the Monster of the Week format, which never really suits long, sort of growthy character arcs, it was fitting in a bit, and I think that's why it was getting a bit better. But the writers sort of really got to unleash, and I mean the plots definitely got better when they switched to serialized stuff as well. And I mean this is sort of helmed by Jed Whedon, who's the best Whedon, and his wife Marissa. And, so I think they sort of got to step actually into their element, which I don't know if they were like, they may have been sort of more under the thumb of the powers that be, the sort of suits. And then when, for whatever reason, maybe they got more control later and that was sort of what helped them switch. But it definitely, it just feels like they got more into it. When they were...
I think, honestly, the problem might just be that the show was built to have a twist at episode 17. And so when you're writing a show like that, the first half of that season, or the first 2/3 of that season, is the stuff before the actual stuff starts, It's the preamble. And that can't help when you're writing it.
Yeah, sort of what you're saying is if you're setting, this whole thing up in episode 17 to sort of catch you by surprise and subvert what you think's going to happen, first you have to set the expectations that the normal stuff is going to happen. And so to do that, you're just going to have to do the normal thing.
And that was quite successful at the time, right? Like that was... I remember when I was watching the show, it was not expected what started happening.
I didn't believe it for a while. Like, I remember there were like 3 or 4 episodes where I was like, this isn't going to be real. Something like it's going to be a fake out, or somebody's going to be a double, triple, quadruple agent or something.
A secret quadruple probationary agent.
Yeah, and then it was just like, it was really by like episode 2 of season 2, I sort of had to sit down and be like, okay, no, this has actually happened.
Yeah, this is real. Yeah, this is what happened. So let's stop talking around it and let's just say here, like, this is a show that succeeds because you don't expect what happens, or this twist succeeds because you don't expect what happens, and then the show becomes one of my favorite shows. At least during the last season, it was my favorite show on TV, and it's still up there, really high up there. So I would urge people, if they want to get into this show, we haven't really talked about why we love it, but we do love it, and it's worth checking out before we dive into it a bit deeper.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, if you're someone who is happy to sort of skip stuff and everything, like, seriously consider just skipping straight to episode 17, or maybe just do a couple before it. But
I'm sure there are skips in there, or there's a list of like which ones you can skip from the first half, because this is a show that people love and they want to get people into it, and everyone in the fan community of this show recognizes the worst part of the show is the first part of the show.
Yeah, it's just really hard because you can't really just tell people to like try it out, because just
try
most
it out
of the
for
first
15 episodes and then it's good.
Yeah, most of the first season isn't really indicative of what's actually good about the show, or what we actually like about it. I think everyone just sort of got through those first 17 episodes because I guess they didn't hate it, and then suddenly you start to love it.
Yeah. Shall we talk about it? Let's talk about what happens in the show, shall we?
Yeah.
So if you're familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if you've seen Captain America 2, which was one of the bigger cinematic movies, Marvel Cinematic Universe movies in kind of phase 2, one of the key plot points of that movie is that S.H.I.E.L.D. is diseased. It's been infiltrated and even was kind of built from the ground up with this kind of subculture within S.H.I.E.L.D. of a secret villain group called Hydra, which are like the evil S.H.I.E.L.D.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and it's a big turning point in this movie that this entire S.H.I.E.L.D. organization from the very start has had Hydra inside it doing things and manipulating things behind the scenes. And then episode 17 is the episode that came out the week after that movie was released. And so obviously the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. completely gets disintegrated and falls apart and had spies inside it the whole time has to be relevant for this show because it's called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
And so what happens is one of the characters that you have, known the entire time, who has just kind of been this bland, all-American kind of action hero character, who's had as much development as all the other characters, and you like him essentially as much as all the other characters at this point. Turns out he was a double agent the entire time, and he kills some characters that you've known for the past 5 or 6 episodes. And it turns into this weird kind of thing where you really feel the betrayal on this team. You really feel how betrayed they are that he has just killed some of their closest friends and attempted to kill them and almost succeeds in killing 2 of the main characters. And
yeah,
it becomes very tense.
And the show has set you up. The entire time it's sort of happening, I was just sitting there and I was like, well, come on, we all know Ward's secretly still working for the good guys.
Of course he's a good guy because it's Grant Ward, it's one of the main characters.
Yeah, this is all some trick.
In TV, the main characters don't just turn to the other side. Like, that's not how it works.
But then he's a villain in seasons, 2, 3 and beyond.
And I think it's hard to talk about this without talking about how excellently Brett Dalton, who's the actor who plays Grant Ward, does it. He just pulls it off flawlessly. It's weird. This show doesn't start out being that well acted, I don't think, but the actors really grow into their characters after having played them for a few months, and it's, at the moment, I think, incredibly well acted.
Yeah, and I mean, the hugest improvement to me is I just remember at the start of the show I found Fitz and Simmons, who are the 2 science officers of the team, just kind of like cringy in your classic like awkward scientist duo who just sort of save the problems with their hacking at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And I mean, by the end of, especially, during season 3, they're easily 2 of the most interesting characters in the show.
Yeah, definitely. All the characters grow so much, and the actors grow with the characters, and they kind of merge into this one thing that just means that they're able to be, I don't know, outstanding on screen.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's apparent at this point that we both really love this show, and we could talk about it for a long time, and we already kind of have talked about it for a long time without even talking about that much about it. I want to talk about so each season 1 kind of starts off with this episode of the week format until we hit towards the end, and then the overarching plot that's kind of been in some of the episodes earlier on starts taking over. A plot revolving around this mysterious character called the Clairvoyant, who's behind all these shadowy organizations and whatever. Season 1, I think, is the worst, is the weakest season, even after it gets good. Because
definitely.
The later seasons are great. Season 2, again, just completely changes the game for the show. It introduces all these new things, and they completely redefine how the show works.
For me, the last few episodes of season 2 are probably still the height of the show. I think some people would argue that the middle of season 4 is better, and I mean, that's a fight for another day. But yeah, season 2 just starts nailing everything. And yeah, like I said, I think that's as good as the show's been. Yeah,
I think the finale of season 2 is, I just sat there and I watched it and I thought, this is the best show that I've seen in a long time. And then it kind of continues that momentum through season 3 and season 4.
It's far and away, like, I would unequivocally give it the best sort of network show I watch. I think the only shows that are on its level are those sort of big budget, like, cable shows, like Game of Thrones or The Expanse or something. Just in terms of what's on network TV, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is really a step above everything else. For sure.
So season 2 deals with this plot that's to do with Inhumans, which are kind of like X-Men's mutants in execution, I guess. One of our main characters finds out that she is one, and suddenly she has superpowers, and there's this whole dynamic about her accepting her new role and meeting these other characters that are like her, and kind of finding this society of Inhumans that completely changes again the dynamic of the show, which is insane to think that they do that again. And then season 3 and then season 3 happens, and season 3 is weird to me because it was at this point that they kind of transitioned from whatever Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was before, quite a fun, quite a well-made, compelling show, to something more kind of horrific which was interesting. They got a bit of a later time slot, and the show started getting more and more.
Well, they used it.
I don't know, horrifying. Yeah, they used it. Season 3 involves a lot of quite disturbing things, including mind control and some implied kind of under the behind the scenes or heavily quite implied sexual abuse / rape, mind control-y kind of stuff, which is
it's interesting because season 3 it does sort of just take. I don't think it introduces too many new concepts. It takes what was in the first 2 seasons, like Inhumans and S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, and then just takes them in a very different direction.
Well, it kind of introduces the concept of space and terrifying other planets, right?
Yeah.
So season 1 and 2 are completely terrestrial, and then in season 3, in the end of season 2, the team has discovered this mysterious artifact, and season 2 ends with one of the characters, this giant stone monolith, breaking down into a liquid, sucking up one of the characters, and then reforming into a solid, and then the character's just gone. and it sets this up as, this is going to be the big thing in next season, like what happened to Gemma Simmons, who's one of the character who disappears. And then it just kind of, season 3 starts, and I definitely didn't expect this early. I don't know if you expected this, but they resolved that at such a breakneck speed while still being completely satisfying. And then the show just has this incredible pacing of like insane stuff is happening, and it's not bad pacing. It's engaging and very fast paced. Of just balls to the wall, crazy shit happening in every episode.
Yeah,
to the extent where if I was watching a network TV show, it's the kind of thing where I'd expect in a less well-made show, some conflict gets set up and then there's 3 episodes of the characters not really being able to resolve it and just kind of being like, oh no, we can't do anything. And then finally they get the MacGuffin or whatever and something happens. But in the start of season 3 of S.H.I.E.L.D. to me is this thing of shit, stuff's actually happening and it's all developing, and how are they gonna have 15 more episodes of this show in this season if they're doing it like this?
I definitely remember things being set up, like things would be set up in like episode 13 or something, and just through sort of habit of watching network TV shows, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this will be important in like 7 weeks. And then like 20 minutes later, it's already finished. And I was just like, wait, but what are we going to do now?
They've retied it in and it's all resolved and it's all kind of affected the plot, and you can see it's affecting the plot to the future. And it's this stuff of like, it's incredible. It's such a well-paced, fast-paced show. I don't know how to put it other than that. God. So then season 4 comes on.
And this is the one, I mean, for me, season 4 is a huge part of the reason I really wanted to bring this up today, because, so season 4...
The concept of pods. That
introduces, the concept of these pods, which are basically, so as a network TV show, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has 22 episodes in a season, and that's just a lot.
I don't think there's a show that can do that without being affected by it.
Exactly. And I mean, seasons 2 and 3 are both great, but there are definitely episodes where I wouldn't necessarily call them filler. I think in 2 and 3, S.H.I.E.L.D. did a good job of not necessarily making them feel like filler, but they were definitely not entirely on task. Like it was sort of subtasks.
Yeah, like maybe 2 episodes could have been combined into one episode.
Yeah, or like, in their quest to defeat the bad guy, it also turns out they have to defeat this associate bad guy, and or they need to get information from somewhere else, and so it's not exactly filler, but like it's excuses to delay the main confrontation.
Yeah, I would class it as they wrote the story to be longer than it needed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Not necessarily filler, but a competent editor could have made it less episodes.
Exactly. And so what season 4 introduces is these pods, which basically some genius just decided that instead of doing 22 episodes covering one big plot, they could just have 3 groups of about 7 or 8 episodes that all deal with their own sort of plots that are kind of interconnected, so there's still sort of a general theme.
Thematically linked as well as linked through plot, I would say.
Yeah, there's still sort of a theme to each season, but there's sort of... So, I mean, season 4, I think the first, 7 or 8 episodes deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. fighting Ghost Rider, who is not played by Nicolas Cage.
I know, which is a tragedy. But he's a different Ghost Rider, which I think they knew. We can't do what is his name, Johnny Blaze again, because you can't beat Nicolas Cage. So they had to do a different Ghost Rider, which is Robbie Reyes.
Yeah. And then so after about episode 8, it then suddenly breaks into this LMD thing. LMD stands for Life Model Decoys. So basically, half the characters get replaced by robotic duplicates, and the other half are basically trying to figure out who's been swapped and who hasn't, because even the robots don't know.
Yeah. I would class the conclusion of the LMD pod as some of the most tense television I've ever seen, because there is one episode in particular, which I think is one of the highest rated episodes, where you know that one character is human, and you know that one of two characters is human and the other one is a robot, and it's just this cat and mouse game of them each trying to deceive the other into thinking they're trying to deceive the audience and trying to deceive you into trying to know which one's the human and which one's the robot, and you just can't, and it's so intense, and it's so it's so good.
And that's the part that's generally considered in terms of ratings, that's the highest rated part of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
And then there's a third pod, which is pretty cool, where they all get, after these robots sort of don't entirely lose, the whole team gets trapped in a virtual reality thing.
Basically tie with them. Some of the robots die, but the team gets so heavily fucked up that it's basically irrecoverable. And they haven't really recovered from it, have they?
No, we're halfway through season 5 at the moment, and everything's still getting put back together.
I think the writers knew, look, they can't come back from this, so we just have to put them into space. Far in the future, that's all we can do. So the third pod is them getting trapped inside a virtual reality, which has been built up through the LMD arc as this kind of thing, which is like how the robot Ada, who's the villain robot, kind of operates is through this framework which lets her kind of simulate life, right?
Yeah. And then season 5 is still currently in its first pod. I think the first pod's actually ending this week. And that's been dealing with space / time travel / a lot of things. And I have they've given a few clues as to what the next pod's going to be.
Yeah, so they've been sent into the future to try and help the last surviving humans after the world was destroyed by one of the main characters. And so I suspect either pod 2 or pod 3 will be going back and trying to stop the end of the world.
Yeah, and
and we kind of see where it goes from there.
They've hinted that quite heavily. So I mean, I'm looking forward to it, but I think they're stopping for the whole Winter Olympics or something, so we've got to wait about 2 months.
Yeah, that sucks. Who cares about the Winter Olympics? Why don't they stop for the Winter Marble Olympics? That's what I care about.
The Winter Marble Olympics will just have to get us through the lack of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. If anything's up to the challenge, I think the Winter Marble Olympics is, but...
But anyway, yeah, I love the pods. I think it's the best way.
Yeah, it's a great idea, isn't it? It's surprising that it hasn't been done before.
Exactly what I was going to say. As it sort of started happening, and I was like, what? Why isn't everyone doing this? This isn't a super, incredibly difficult idea, really.
Yeah, it's not a hard idea to come up with.
Somebody just looked at
just not done.
Great network shows and said, hey, their seasons are only a half or a third as long. Why don't we just do 2.5 seasons worth of storytelling in our stupid long seasons? And it works so well. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years this is fairly common for shows that it would suit. Obviously something like a sitcom doesn't need this.
It doesn't need a season long arc.
Yeah.
But shows that have a season long arc that is the kind of progression of the season. I don't know. I'm tempted to call back to iZombie, which we discussed on the show, which I didn't like, and I feel like if that had 2 pods in a season or 3 pods in a season, I really would have liked it.
I disagree. I think that show was suited to the Monster of the Week, and I actually wish it would just stick to doing more of that, because right now it's a bit story heavy. But shows like The Flash on CW could definitely use this. They really sort of pad out their stories, and especially to the point where it makes no sense. A new villain will show up and terrorize the city, and it's oh no, this is a big deal. And then there's just like 4 episodes where they sort of fight a villain of the week, and it's sort of like, what the hell's this new villain doing? And then
he's just hanging out.
Yeah, and then the new villain will sort of come back, and it's like, oh, I'm just as terrible as ever. And it's like, yeah, but apparently you take like 5-week naps.
Don't you know that the new villain hired the other villains to terrorize the city because he didn't want to terrorize the city yet, because he didn't want to get his hands dirty yet, but he will later, but he doesn't want to yet.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have to stay tuned to find out why, Elliot. And when we get to the end, just forget about it. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great device. I really hope it starts to become a lot more common. Either that or shows just need to start doing, the thing where they
shorter seasons.
Yeah, where they only have 10 or 13 in a season anyway. And I mean, that's what most like Netflix and Hulu shows do. So
yeah, and we talk about this a lot. I feel like I bring this up for a lot of shows, which is just American seasons are too long. It just hinders the plot of the show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and again, it depends on the show, and that's sort of the problem is I think for most shows, the type of show isn't considered too much. It's for network shows, it's 22 weeks or nothing or something like that.
It's a show, so it has to have 22 episodes. And yeah, the pod solution is just it's brilliant. It works so well in S.H.I.E.L.D. and I don't see why it wouldn't work in other things. This is a long episode, Elliot.
Yeah, I thought this might happen. I mean, this is...
Look, let's split it into pods. Yeah. That was the end of pod 1 of Media Empty.
Yeah, no, this is such a good show. I thought we'd end up rambling. Like it's
yeah, I could talk about this show literally forever. I think.
In terms of like just plot, twists, actually like having decent characters with character development.
Yeah.
Season 1 notwithstanding,
entertaining, humorous when it needs to be, dramatic when it needs to be, incredibly tense and intense when it needs to be.
Yeah, it's it is really good. And I mean, if you start watching it and you hate it, skip to episode 17, and I assure you that there's like a 90% chance that will change.
Do you reckon people can just start at season 2?
I mean, I've thought about that. I mean, I don't see why not. I'm like a sort of massive continuity nerd. There's no way I'd skip anything. So
I'm a purist.
I mean, I can't get into the headspace at all where I'd skip to 17. So I at that point, I'm just like, well, if you skip to 17, may as well skip to season 4. Who cares?
Just skip to season 3, whatever. Do whatever, man. Skip to the finale of season 2. Enjoy.
And I mean, I haven't rewatched most of this stuff in quite a while, so it's hard for me to remember exactly what's happening. But I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of people recommend skipping just to 17. So that's probably all I'd really want to recommend. But
yeah, I think maybe watch episode 1 and then skip to episode like 14 or something.
Yeah, definitely. Episode 1's probably still worth watching because even though it's not great, it actually introduces everyone, which is important.
Yeah, it does the everyone gets their little bits of introduction.
Yeah.
All right, God, I don't know what else is there to say about it. It's a show that we hold very dear to our hearts just because it's great. I think I'm a bit in the minority where I don't like season 5 as much as the previous 3 seasons. I think it's better than season 1, of course, but it's still great. But season 2, 3, and 4 were just every episode. I was just like, "Fuck, this is the best show on TV." So yeah, I can't praise it highly enough. It's great. It's a great show.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So, do you think we're going to see Brett Dalton again in season 5?
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at this point.
Guess what? He's back and he's a zombie. I wonder what they could do to bring him back. He got like fucking sent into space and flown into the sun or some shit. Didn't he?
Maybe he got put in some 100-year orbit.
Now he's back in the future. All right. Well,
yeah.
You know what else? One more thing to say about this show before we finish.
Yeah.
It's worth watching just for the Squidward pun that can be made about Brett Dalton's character in season 3. It's just amazing. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Great show, great puns, great life.
Yeah. Actually, I would have to disagree. I think you only need to watch up to, I think it's like halfway through season 2 when Sonic the Hedgehog shows up.
I don't remember this.
Who
Who's Sonic the Hedgehog? I'm picturing that character from X-Men that like hugs people. Do you remember that in like X-Men 3 or something? The character that hugs people and then spikes come out of the face to kill
one of the characters gets turned into like a giant blue hedgehog thing, and then Sky makes
That's in season 3.
a Sonic the Hedgehog reference, and it was fantastic.
Wait, I do not remember this.
Really? Raina.
Oh, Raina. Yeah, of course. I kept thinking you were talking about Lash. This is going to make no sense to people who haven't watched it. But yeah, it's Sonic the Hedgehog.
You should watch it.
Good too. She's my OC.
Wow.
Raina, I think, is Jed and Marissa's OC for Sonic. Anyway, all right. Should we just end it there?
Yeah, I think that's a good point to stop.
All right. Well, see you, Sonic OC.